Good evening.
Hope everybody's doing well. What's going on, James?
Oh, not much.
So I'm curious, in a second, we're gonna talk about first principles. And whoever's listening, I'd like to see if anyone can comment on what their viewpoint on a first principle would be. Give that just a quick second here.
Yeah, I mean, well, while they're thinking about an example of a first principle, um, someone that I know likes to define first principles as a approach to thinking, and the definition that they use is always committing to do certain things the same way. And obviously, that's what a lot of traders need to do in order to be profitable. But
Yeah, it's a
first,
requirement.
I mean, you can't really escape it. Ah, welcome from Brazil.
So James, when you think, okay, Tim Smith market structure, breakouts, channels, trading ranges, I'd agree with that. That's close.
Yeah, I mean,
That's definitely close.
market structure is an example of the expression of first principles. So the market cycle is the expression of the first principles of the way that markets operate, which is that they're always searching for price, and price where they can find the most amount of two-sided trade, and that often requires breakouts, and we know that that's what leads to the market cycle. Um, but the most important aspect of or first principle for price action traders would be the breakout. And for the folks in Systems Academy, we'll be dealing with this much more in depth in our coaching session tomorrow night. But I thought that so I've shared it before. My balance and trading ranges is definitely one of the expressions of a first principle, right? Which is that as the market cycle ages and you get breakouts, those breakouts fail at a higher rate than they do early in a market cycle when the change is new, right? When that trend has gone on for a longer period of time, you'll get many more failed breakouts.
Absolutely.
Um, So yeah, what do you think, Brad? You think it's worth just throwing the chart on the screen real quick and discussing how this algo would approach thinking in terms of because my approach with this was really to make it think like a price action trader on every bar and to assess the probabilities of being either a trend or a trading range on every bar, which is really what we're talking about here. If the first principle is the breakout, then yeah, that's what we have to assess on every bar is this breaking out, and if so, is it likely to get continuation?
Yeah, we can do that. And feel free to you feel free to share your screen if you want, or I can share mine. And I think one thing that's worth mentioning is when you look at, for instance, the video course of Val's, and if I take a look at it, what are some of the first videos of the course? In other words, you have once you get past the starting out videos, when you go to the very next session, and you get past basically candles and setups, pullbacks and bar counting, the most important section is actually the market cycle. And when you think about trading as a whole, if you can get the market cycle correct, you can pretty much trade in the right direction. So why is that? Think about a line chart. If you look at a line chart, you can pretty much tell the context. So that means, back to that first principles concept, that is probably the single most important thing about trading. If you go back to Al's books, the most important thing that a trader can decide on is, will the breakout above or below the bar succeed or fail? Out of 81 bars, there's probably 9 bars that are inside bars, which means all the other bars on the chart are a breakout of something. And if you can truly identify the market cycle, then the amount of systems you can build from that are endless almost. That's critical.
Yeah, and the interesting thing with that is that, every type of breakout has a different system you could build around it.
Oh, absolutely.
So if it's a outside bar, different system than if it's a strong bar with little overlap that gets
Mhm.
followed through, versus, a bar that has more climactic properties versus one that is, strong follow through or weak follow through from. And then it's from what kind of bar did it break? Is the follow through bar coming after a breakout of what type? You
100%.
know, yeah. Let me throw this up here real quick. Momentum is definitely a first principle. It's kind of a secondary first principle, which is derived from the quality of the breakouts. But it's definitely up there, and it's certainly one of the things that you would or could build a system around, is assessing momentum in breakouts and in pullbacks. Um, sorry, let me make this larger. So, oh yeah, the day type algo identified this as a wide range bear trend. So we know this algo is the one that I've shared before, which is assessing the market bar by bar and determining whether each bar is a trend or a trading range bar. All of the painted bars are painted for different reasons, and just because one of them is painted does not mean that it's necessarily a breakout bar. It just means that a trend bar. It could be a breakout inside of a trading range and therefore a candidate for a fade. So, um, as you see here, this is a trend bar that's a sell on a pullback, and then here this is a sell on a pullback. This is a sell above. This is a weak
So
breakout,
James, just real
and
quick to help the audience
mhm.
out. These the purple violet bars are those measuring breakouts?
These are breakouts that have a high Z score. So these are
Okay,
these
so
are these are
explain what a
measuring
Z-score
big.
is real quick.
Yeah, these are measuring big breakout bars, and so the code can measure breakouts, big breakouts. This is something that Ali coded. So his code was measuring them according to a profit factor, or sorry, a range factor, and I like to do it using Z score. So I added Z score, and Z score is basically a standardized, a normalized standard distribution. So basically, taking a standard distribution and starting from a 0 point and then measuring against that, and it's just a statistical method for assessing a range of data and comparing something against a range of data. And so here, these are statistically large bars. Uh, Uh, so Trader Chick, this is the high Z score does not necessarily mean it has a higher chance for a pullback. It typically will get a pullback, like if it is a trend bar that it has a high Z score, it will typically pull back, but the amount of pullback is variable. And where in the market cycle you get that Z bar um, really determines how much pullback to expect. So it requires a bit of a study to determine how to assess them based on the context. Um, but so
But a
here,
high Z-score means it's a climactic bar, right?
not it depends how you measure climax. Like it, so this code measures, determines that 57 is a climax. because of the relationship between the previous high and the current high, and the previous low and the current low. Um, these just measure the size of the bar compared to the size of the previous, and in my code, 20 bars. So Tim, it's 20 bars back. You could, if you added another measurement, do it, uh, determine whether it's climactic or not. So based on the code that I'm using, it wouldn't determine whether they're climaxes as well. Um, but as we see here, this is basically seeing this all as a trading range. And this pullback here into the trading range and failure to get a substantial breakout generates a sell signal above the high. And this reversal, even though it's an outside bar from the highs of the trading range, also generates a sell signal. So this is a sell in a trading range. And so the pluses are sells in trading ranges, and this is a sell in a trend. So triangle is sell in a trend. And like as we see here, this is so this actually, well, sorry, this is a different type of sell. So most of the pluses are sells in trading ranges. Like this is a buy in a trading range. This is a sell in a trading range. But yeah, we're not going to go through all of the signals. The reason I wanted to share this is because the way the code generates signals is really by embedding this first principles thinking into the way that it looks at every bar. Basically, all it's doing is saying, is this bar a trend or a trading range bar? If it's a trend bar, what is it breaking out from, and where is it in the context of the day, right? So is it a new low? Is it a new high? Um, and is it breaking out from a previous leg, or is it just breaking out from a previous bar that is within the previous leg? So there are a few measurements that it's looking at, and then for trading ranges, where is the bar closing? What is the close of the bar itself, and where is it closing within the trading range? So this became a trading range on bar 13, and we can see this is a strong close at the high of a trading range. That's a
So
sell above,
and so
or fade.
James,
Hmm.
quick question for you. For those that are looking at this and they're they see how this system is identifying big breakout bars that have a high Z score. If someone is not, they understand the concept, but they don't want to code it. What would you say when you're looking at those big bars? Are there You said there's a few things that they're looking at, or the system is identifying the code. Is
Hmm.
there a few things that are more important than some of the others? If you were going to eyeball this chart, as far as the size of these bars,
The size of those bars in particular.
well, just
Mhm.
in general. So, like when you're looking at bar, what is it, bar 13, and the bar where your mouse is actually the big bull bar. Is there something that
This one,
stands out
bar
in
bar
particular?
21.
Yeah, is there
This
something I could use with my eyes that stands out in particular that would explain why it's painting that as a trading range bar?
Yes, and it's the amount of this is the amount of overlap. And so the way that this algorithm looks at trading ranges, basically, as soon as you get a higher high in a bear leg, where you're getting lower highs.
Yep.
So this from this bar, it starts looking at how much of a breakout the market generates from this range. So no breakout, no breakout, no breakout, small breakout, but too much of the bar is overlapping inside of this range for it to qualify as a breakout, and then no breakout, no breakout. So basically, now this range is expanding. So now the trading range is down to here and up to here. So when you get this bull bar that's mostly overlapping, breaking out, this has a higher probability. The code sees it as having a higher probability of being a sell at the high of a trading range than a breakout and the start of a new market cycle.
Makes perfect sense.
Um, One thing that I would definitely take away from this is, selling the close of big bars or buying the close of big bars is a very high risk trading decision, because it requires obviously a very large stop.
When you
to
say selling, do you mean trading in the direction of the
yeah,
breakout?
yeah, trading in the direction. So whether it's a sell the close on a bear breakout or a buy the close um, on a big bull breakout. Oh, well, that's an outside bar. So here, so buy the close here, and we talked about this bar actually before. So buying the close here would be not advisable. Um, but buying the 50% pullback and scaling in at the high of the previous bar is always a reasonable way to trade breakouts if they have a high probability of continuation. And so in this case, scaling in at 50%, that's typically the optimal entry, unless it's breaking out of something very specific where you could scale in at 30 and then 50. Um, I usually think about 30, 50, and 70 as my targets within a bar to assess, to actively assess whether or not the market is treating this as a trading range. So if it's pulling back 70%, the market is typically transitioning after that big breakout into more of a trading range. And so that'll be one leg in a trading range and you'll get another move down, but likely not a big breakout. If you only pull back 50%, then higher odds are that you're going to get another leg down. Whereas, so like here, this is a good example. Pulled back 70%, at least 70, more than 70%, and it moved into a trading range for most of the afternoon. After that, so you can use these big bars to help calibrate your expectations for subsequent price action, as well as use them to determine probably your next 5 to 6 bars of trading decisions.
So I want someone to answer this question, and we're talking about big bars for just a minute. Let's go back to the main screen for just a second. We're talking about a big bar. Why is it James is pointing out these big bars, they have a high Z score? What causes big breakouts to go sideways? In other words, James said, if you're buying the close of a big bull bar, it's usually better to just wait and buy the pullback because usually there's a deeper pullback than what traders want to see. And where I'm getting at is everything in trading has you can call it there's symmetry, there's geometry, whatever you want to call it. It's math. There's a specific reason why channels end up evolving into trading ranges. And it has to do with how parabolic a move is. So a trend, a very strong trend, like a small pullback trend, you will not see very big bars. You might see overlap, but if you look at if we just pull up any sort of chart and we look at here for a moment, there's a reason why this breakout here lasted for several bars. And you can see it right here. There's not a lot of overlap. There's micro gaps. The reason why micro gaps create strong buying is somewhat to what James is talking about. And if we go to here, strong breakout, big second leg down. But the problem is, and it's with any move, big sell off, sideways, another leg down, and then an even stronger leg down here. When moves become climactic or parabolic, they reverse. We can go to any one of these charts. Let's just look here. This behavior is climactic. Big rallies, big reversals here, big sell off. But what do you notice about this sell off right here? James, would you say, I know you're guessing because you can't see it on your system, but this bar right here where my mouse is, can you see my mouse?
Mm-hmm.
Is this probably a high Z score?
I mean, it looks like it would probably be a candidate. I mean, there are a lot of a wide
Yeah.
range bars there, so it may not be, but it would be close, probably.
But you would say the breakout bar, when you look at this bar and compare it to the left, this has a lot of overlap here. In other words, if I want to think about a system and I just want to look at the chart. If I'm
Mm-hmm.
looking at breakouts, I want to think about it, finding breakouts that have very little overlap. And we can look through here. There's very few bars that actually have little overlap. Maybe here compared to the left.
Actually,
But
that this actually is a great kind of lead into Trader Chick's question about why isn't 75 or 77 pink. It was actually because 75 was a an inside bar, and 77 was a breakout. Was a breakout, but it was a breakout. So I I could show you actually. I did a study on breakouts from inside bars and decided to add a filter to the system to allow you to either measure breakouts from inside bars or ignore it. So if I turn this off, you'll see, should see. Does it require turning that off? Oh, that's not the toggle. All right, so there is a toggle that'll turn it on and off. Oh wait, no, sorry. That's not the change to the signal. Let me go back to that and turn that back on because that'll mess up all the signals. I have that as a filter on all of these. It'll be on here. Sorry. So do not. All right. So here we are. If you don't measure from inside bars, then that'll turn on. So as you can see, 75 is an inside bar of 74. 76 is an inside bar of 75. So when 77 breaks out of this inside bar, this algorithm is not measuring the breakout from here. It's measuring the breakout from the last non-inside bar. So it's measuring the breakout from here. And the amount of overlap of this bar and this bar is greater than the threshold that I use to determine whether it's a breakout. So turn that back on and that should disappear. So that was why. But that was an interesting question. So one
that
thing
is a
to
very good point.
Yeah, and so definitely something to keep an eye on because it's easy to kind of get caught up in the bar and not pay attention to what it's at, where the breakout is actually, where you need to monitor the breakout from. And it's you typically want to look to the last non-inside bar rather than taking breakouts from inside bars.
Oh, absolutely, absolutely.
Higher odds this is the final flag, and then this breakout will fail, which is what happened there.
So let's go back for a second.
Yeah.
We've talked about. Let me grab this. We've been talking about breakouts and first principles, and we think about a breakout. Everybody. It's funny. Everybody thinks of a breakout as something really simple. One tick above a bar. But when you really think about a breakout, how many possibilities are there when it comes to trading a breakout? And when you think about, do you buy the close? Do you buy the pullback? Do you wait for, do you wait for a strong bull bar and then wait to see how it pulls back and then buy on a stop? Or you mentioned those Z bars. For some of those bars, they weren't necessarily like bar 7 today, where you went down for 2 bars sideways, big bear bar that James was showing. It was purple or magenta on his
Mm-hmm.
screen. It's not a great sell the closed bar, but when you think about those big bars, they're wonderful profit taking bars. Most strong breakouts, when you really think about it, lead to sideways trading, or most breakouts that are big, they lead to sideways trading for a few bars. So let's just talk through how many systems. I'm starting Systems Academy today. How many systems can I really build on the subject of breakouts? Is it just one system, or would you say that it's, you could build 100 systems when you really put your mind to it?
Easily 100 systems because
I agree with that totally.
and the nice thing about that is that it's really particular to the disposition of the trader, so that like I can I can share the signals for a system that I built that I can't trade. I hate trading it, but it's a statistically sound system that I did all the research and documentation for, and I moved into the production phase to start forward testing it, and I absolutely hated it. And it was because it was based on trading big bars. I got to get the code from. I don't even have the code in here. I'll have to pull it in. Sorry.
But
Well,
it's
yeah.
it's funny you say that, because when I think back to all the discussions we've had with some of the Systems Academy students now, I don't know about you, but a lot of them told me their biggest challenge would be not exiting the trade when they should. And a lot of them loved to scale into trades, fade breakouts. And they would always talk about how they'd have a great winning percentage, but then there'd be this one trade where they'd buy the low of something, scale in once or twice, and instead of it reversing, they would get a downside breakout and they would be forced to take this really big loss. And when we think about the concepts of first principles and breakouts, if one can just learn how to build a system on identifying what's a strong breakout in the first leg, and just make it a system to not trade against that direction, they're at least going to stop the bleeding or stop losses. It goes back to one of Al's. It's funny. There's a part in Al's book where he talks about how when the counter trend trader, in other words, the fader, the person fading the move, when they can learn to stop fading a trend in a small pullback, fading a small pullback trend and wait for an actual trend line break, and then a retest of the highs before they sell in a bull trend, they'll instantly stop losing money. And I kind of think about that with first principles of just a strong breakout. If you can just learn to identify when you have a strong breakout and don't trade against the breakout, kind of like trading always in, then it's almost, as long as you can trade in that direction, you're in a much better spot. I mean, how many people, James, would you say have trouble actually, really understanding what is a strong breakout and what is leg one?
I mean, I think that
How
that's
many people don't think about that when they're trading? Because that could be just as important.
I mean, I think that the difficulty with trading is keeping that, top of mind when you are actively trading, because it's so easy to get distracted by movement, by price, and having that larger context in mind all the time is very difficult. And to be fair, that is one of the reasons why Ali and a lot of the folks in our program use the paint bar. It's to help remind us of what we should be prioritizing. And I think that I don't know how many folks do have difficulty with it, but um, the in general, I'd say it's hardest to keep in mind the breakout as the starting point for all decision making, because as soon as you start thinking about a trade rather than thinking about remaining in sync with the market, uh, you start looking for trades, or at least I used to, and trying to find reasons to trade, whether or not it's aligned with a system. And I think for me, having gone through Systems Academy and prior to that only trading high twos and low twos, the amount of opportunities that I now understand work with my disposition, are just, there's more than I could reasonably trade in a day. Like, I could not possibly take all the trades that the systems I've developed actually produce.
Because the system helps you identify those main principles, right?
It operates only on those, and therefore I never stray from it. And it generates more signals than I can trade. So
So let's just think of
yeah.
what you just said. It's something really fascinating. If you connect it back to Al in the video course,
Hmm.
what you basically just said is you've built a system that helps you explain the market cycle. Is it in a trend? Is it in a trading range? And based on those signals, it's almost telling you what to do. And if
Yeah.
you can just figure out that piece, it's like what is Al, what Ali says about a third leg. And most of you that have listened, we've said it, 14 or 15 times about what not to do in the third leg and what's doing the first leg. Those two pieces alone can give you so much trading information. But it's interesting. I like to think about trading as far as, let's say you're driving a car. There's probably things that you think about that are just, it's so ingrained But if you were going to teach someone brand new how to drive, you would have to explain that to them. And they'd have to be thinking about that, top of mind. Maybe one is just not, having one foot, you don't have both feet on the both pedals, something like that. Who knows? But trading, there you're absolutely right when you say there's certain things that are just that have to be so top of mind that are just so easy to forget. And then when we forget it, we all of a sudden get the tunnel vision on that one bar and we lose sight of everything.
And actually, at least for me, that tunnel vision also leads to anxiety because it divorces all of your logic from the context of the chart, which is the only thing that really determines the probabilities that you're trying to assess.
Hmm.
Because that's what gives the meaning to the breakouts, such that, like, if you get those strong breakouts in leg 3 and all you're looking at is, was it a breakout, was it strong? If you're missing the larger context because you're so myopic, then, at least for me, I would unconsciously start feeling anxious and not be able to, properly then manage the trade and get out break even, which is usually typically possible. But in any case, I think that that's one of the, likely primary causes for anxiety as well, is not having a sense of the larger context. Because when you have a larger sense of the larger context, like Al says, I mean, even if you sell the low of a trading range, you can usually get out break even as long as you manage it properly.
Yeah, because it's the one's lack of understanding causes them to panic.
Hmm.
That makes perfect sense. So then let me ask you this. If you have a system, it's coded. Why can't you just, I'm a student of Systems Academy. Let's say I'm starting in your class today. Why can't you just write a manual, write out how to read it, hand me the system, and I can trade it? Why not just, why can't I just pay you to have the system?
Yeah, I mean, that's a great question. If you want to look at this chart, it's the same reason that I can't trade this system, which I built. Can you
Yeah, yeah.
bring this up? So this is a big bar trading system, and it makes me feel terrible to trade it. So yeah, this is a sell, like a buy below here. This is a sell above. This is a sell above. This is a sell. So this would actually need to be a sell to close and scale in at 50%.
Hmm.
This is a sell to close and scale in. This is a either buy the close and do nothing, or do nothing and then wait for a pullback. So all of these signals you see,
They're all
they-
valid. Yeah.
they're all valid, but they typically require you to do something that is counter to the move. And unless you have the context for doing it, for the market cycle, when you're doing it, it can feel very strange. And even when you do have the context for the market cycle, I had the experience of not feeling good when I traded it. So, um, the orange are sell on a pullback, and the red pluses are sell to close. So that would be a sell to close. That would be sell on a pullback. Sell on a pullback. That would be a sell on a pullback. Um, and these are sell on pullbacks. Green are green below, green pluses. Where are you? I don't know where some green pluses are. But in any case, um,
So what you're saying though is even though the system works, it still has to match your personality.
exactly. And I did not like trading this system.
And James, would it be fair to say you've built the system, you did all the studies. Let's say it matches my personality. If you
Mhm.
give me the system, is there a possibility that unless I truly understand the logic already of what the market's doing and why your system is painting that, would you say that there's a good possibility that I wouldn't trust the system?
I would say it's almost guaranteed that you wouldn't trust the system.
And that's
That's you have to do, or at least this is something that I've learned through Systems Academy, and it's something
well, I
that
totally
Ali
agree with you with what
Ali
you're
has
going to
said
say.
it a dozen times. That you won't even trust your own system until you've done the research. And I don't, and even though I trust the system, I don't want to trade it. So, like, it's yeah, there's so much nuance about the individual psychology of the person, sitting down to do the work, that it just doesn't seem worthwhile to sit down and do something that doesn't make you feel good. And so I left that alone and wanted to focus on something that was remaining more in tune with the market, which is why I worked on that trend and trading range bar system, which in the end produces more signals and doesn't have me only focusing on those big bars, which is what the big bar trading system, which
So it's
I called Big Bertha, was trading.
but see that's really interesting what you just said and how I mean, really, arguably, the biggest benefit to Systems Academy is you can take the course, you can take any concept of trading. You can sit down with James, and James can explain to you what to do. You can sit down with me, and I can explain what to do. But the problem is, you're the person with the mouse. You're the person in front of the computer, and if you don't actually test it out and fully prove to yourself that hey, what I'm doing actually works, you won't trade it correctly. And I think that's just I think there's very few people that are, robotic enough to just be willing to, if, let's say they fully understand it, just exactly operate a system exactly as it says. Because everybody has a personality. If you listen to Al all the time in the trading room, and if you listen to what he says, he will talk about he knows the market's going to do this, but he felt like doing this. And even though it still works, but it's just he talks about how it's a limit order market, buy below, sell below everything, buy below bars, sell above bars. And he'll talk about all these limit order trades. But if you ask him, he'll only take like 2 of them out of 15. And if you ask Al, he'll say, I just don't like trading I don't like trading with limit orders in a tight trading range. Because if he doesn't want to get trapped on the downside breakout because he'll feel bad. James, if he's buying a big bear bar at the bottom of the range or in a channel, even though a system is telling him to buy the close of this big bear bar, he don't want to buy it because he's going to feel bad if that one time out of however many keeps going down. And it doesn't feel right to him. That doesn't make it a bad system. I think one of the biggest things people struggle with in trading in the prior Systems Academy class, there will be students who will struggle with this in this class, is they will try and build a system that doesn't meet or match their personality. But the reality is you can't give somebody a system to trade. You can't just pay somebody to hand you this system on a platter and say, here's your trading system, ready, set, go. It almost will never work.
I mean, there's a litany of those that exist and are floating around the internet, and I'm sure that plenty of people have tried those. They don't work. There's a reason why everyone's not making money from the systems that they can buy online. It's because I mean, there's myriad reasons, but perhaps trust is the biggest. You have to trust yourself, and deferring trust to someone else is never going to be a long-term way of having success.
It's funny. I remember there's a question that gets asked pretty regularly, and it has something to do with, I want to trade. If I'm going to buy on a limit order at the bottom of the trading range, how do I decide when to get out? That's just the question.
Mm-hmm.
And you could probably think of 50 different reasons or 50 different examples where it's like goes back to calibrated expectancy or calibrated expectation that we always talk about. Part of studying trading and doing the legwork is actually understanding what the market's going to do in that situation. So asking somebody, hey, what's the one secret, or what's the best way to trade? It's kind of a loaded question. Any question, it's how do I, someone talked about the I1R, how do you put your stop? What's the stop place for an I1R? James, you don't have to go into the full details, but just in 1 or 2 sentences, is the stop for an I1R in the same place every time?
No, because it's based on the context of so.
You just said it right there, though.
Yeah,
it's based on the context. So whenever someone asks,
well, I think this brings up an important point, though, because you can have absolute rules, and for doing like a first pass on a system, like a system design pass, like when you want to validate the just the bare bones system to determine whether or not it's worth doing subsequent passes on,
which is the first step.
which is exactly. And when you do that,
and it's quick.
typically you want to use a fixed stop placement rather than a totally subjective, context-based stop, and say, if I have my stop, two, two measured moves away, two measured moves of the signal bar below or above, depending on the direction of the signal. Um, will it be hit before this hits the fixed target? And so, this is kind of answering two different questions, answering both. There was a question earlier. I can't find it. Well, in any case, so if you have a measured move of the signal bar that generated the setup, then that's some variation of that measured move. Then you're probably going to at least have some kind of market context built into the way that you manage the trade, because that signal bar is a function of market context. Whether that signal bar is a breakout bar, if they're two small bars, that get a breakout and follow through, typically, you'll use a measured move of both of those. If it's just a one big breakout bar with with a small follow through bar, maybe you'll only use one. Maybe you'll only use the body if it's mostly body and little wicks. Like, there's a lot of different variations, and a lot of those variations are based on context, and experience, and again, calibrated expectation, right? If it's this type of breakout, if it gets this type of follow through, how much leeway do I need to give it? And like, I hesitate to say there's any fixed stop placement, but what I would say is that when you do a pass to validate a system, you have to use a fixed stop placement to at least validate the idea. And then once you go through and do your forward testing and determine all of those calibrated expectations, then you can start getting a bit more nuanced with where you place the stop and how that can affect your SQM.
So there's guidelines, but there's not rules.
Yeah.
A hard rule that's set in stone. I've yet to find one, at least in trading.
Right.
There's a whole lot of guidelines, though. And, it's interesting. You're talking about context. So what is the fastest way, if I want to learn the context of something, of this certain breakout, what's the fastest way to do that?
Know where you are in the market cycle, which is then knowing, whether that breakout is a breakout within a channel. Is that a breakout inside of a trading range? Is it a breakout that's reversing from the bottom of a trading range, or is it a breakout from a trading range and the start of a new market cycle? So that's
if
really,
I'm just going to trade, if I just want to trade breakouts at the end of the day, I want to build a system on trading a breakout. What James is saying is you can never have one system, because you have to have, or, a better way to put it is one system is a series of smaller systems, or is a series of other systems. Because what did James just say? In order to know what the contact, in order to know what you should do with the breakout, you've got to have a way to identify the market cycle. And that's a whole nother system.
Yeah, and this also suggests that there are different types of research that you do in Systems Academy. So we'll do market studies, or we don't conduct them, but we encourage students to conduct market studies to determine
So why don't we, and make it clear though, why wouldn't we just give that to them?
Because again, these are things that you have to figure out, with guidance, to help maintain that first principles approach. But without that validated experience, even like Brad, you've said it before, how long it took you to trust Al, when he was speaking in the trading room,
It probably took 600 days.
And then how much longer did it take you to trust yourself?
Years.
So,
And years.
I mean,
no, the longer, this was the longer path for me, for sure.
Well, I mean, so the idea that like someone could give someone a market study that says, these are the general tendencies, and these are the expectations that you can have of these tendencies based on, um, like, so for example, the study that I used to put together my market context algorithm. I did, you know, a study of hundreds of days of price action, and determined the fewest number of variables to use to determine the market context for the day based on how the price action develops. And then, you know, but that was something that no one gave me. I hadn't seen anyone produce, and so my goal was to programmatically classify day types based on the expression of price action during that trading session. Um, no one can give that to you, and there are tools that you can build yourself that no one can give you either, because they don't exist yet, and they are the tools that you might most benefit from because of who you are.
Hmm.
um, you know Kelly in SA2 had a great idea. Like, the reason you see on my charts those, like, de-emphasized non-colored bars was one of her ideas. She was like, I just don't want to see the non-signal bars as much as see the other ones, so I'm going to make them transparent, and then, like, have the ability to make them more or less transparent. I was like, oh, that's a great idea. I'm gonna, I don't need them to be, like, invisible, but I'll reduce the amount of transparency those bars have. So, like, that was a tool that she thought would really help the way that she thought about, her trading system, and I also really enjoyed that. But that came from her. It was her. I wasn't thinking about that. And so, the best tools that you will get are the ones that you build yourself.
Absolutely. And you know, I will I'll definitely say it. The more you can think of how you're going to learn, the more you can kind of, as Ali talks about, simulated trading is great. Market replay is great. What's 100 times better is replaying, market replay, or simulating something that you are specifically trying to learn and specifically trying to perform. It's kind of like you're a fighter pilot and you're specifically trying this one maneuver. You're not just jumping in the seat and trying whatever that sticks. And that's the biggest challenge or the biggest issue I've seen. Everybody goes through it. I see a lot of people go through it right now. Is they're going to trade tomorrow morning at 8:30, and they're just going to trade the chart, and they're not going to really have an idea of what they're looking for. They're not going to have an idea of what quote unquote system they're trading. They're just going to trade breakouts, and that's a very open ended question. It's what James said the other day. I'm just going to trade high twos. Well, there's like 40 different types of high twos we could think of in 10 minutes. So you have to be very specific with what you're learning. And if you really want to trade like Al, you have to build a system on every one of those ideas. And then you can eventually, one day, you trade it for so long, you can be like Al, merge it all together in your brain, and you have this system. But to get the idea of, I'm just going to watch something or study something and all of a sudden just be this, trading machine is not real. And that's just the truth. And James, there's one more thing I was going to say real quick. Why don't we talk about, okay, I want to trade. I don't want to, I don't want to, I'm not good at coding, but I really want to do Systems Academy. I want to trade the 5-minute chart so I can watch I can watch the first 4 hours of the day. Can I build a system that has something to do with understanding the day structure?
Yeah, I mean, absolutely. And the expectations for every system should be different at different times in the day. Typically, you'll generally you'll have larger swings at the open. You'll have smaller bar sizes later in the day. That's not always the case. Today we had expansion, range expansion later in the day, so bigger bars later in the day. But typically you'll have a trading range in the afternoon, or at least a few hours of the day, in the middle of the session. And these are just calibrated expectations. So if you're moving into, as we saw earlier, that third leg down breakout, on 25 today. So this breakout here, at 11:30, the odds of moving into a trading range soon after, and also based on the type of bar that got us there, this was a high probability candidate for the beginning of a trade midday trading range. Um, in the same way that this bar at 1150, I mean, even really this one at 1115, breakout back down, test of these breakout points, high probability, and then that one really lasted the rest of the day, the forever trading range. But there's absolutely systems that you would change, or you would trade your systems differently depending on the time of the day or the time of the session. Um, and for me, I mean, I'm done trading by usually 1 at the latest. So like I wouldn't have the opportunity to trade any of these signals here, but any of
You
this
don't
would
need
have
it.
been. Yeah, I mean, here, what do I have? I have 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11 signals that I could have traded today. I traded 4 of them, so that was plenty.
But four's good enough.
Yeah.
Well,
Um, yeah.
no, I was just gonna say, I know we're past the hour mark.
Well, I would ask you, how do you think about time of day and kind of modulating your system according?
Oh yeah, well, for one, I love what you said about the open of the day. Usually, you get range expansion. Then the middle of the day, the market gets squeezed. So in other words, in very simple terms, the range is big on the open, and then in the middle, it gets much smaller. So one of the biggest things I would say to people is if you're going to trade the open when the range is bigger, you should be aware that the range is probably going to get smaller in the middle of the day. So if you make 1 or 2 or 3 mistakes on the open, it's a lot more difficult to make it up and get positive by the end of the day. And for the simple fact that if we think about the open, I would say at least 80% of the time, the open goes sideways. So if I'm going to bet on a trend from the open, I've got a 20% chance. But let's take today. If we're looking at today and we think about it, I'll just say this real quick. It's pretty easy when you see this 2 big bear bars to expect a second leg. So if you're going to get a trend from the open, you'll see it. Even right here, not a great buy the close, but probably going to get a second leg up. So it's not the world's worst trade to buy somewhere down here. I firmly believe, let me just remove that. I'm a firm believer if you can figure out the opening structure of the day, you've got a great chance to have a profit. So if you think through, okay, what is Al a fan of? Al has done probably like 40 webinars over finding the opening swing. And he says there's over an 80% chance you're going to get some sort of opening swing. Normally you get a double top or double bottom or wedge top or wedge bottom, and then you get a swing trade. Therefore, 80% of the time, the market's going to go sideways and break out. And I think too many people don't spend enough time really understanding the open because it's really going to dictate pretty much the rest of the day. Now, the problem with that also is too many people are in a rush. They've got a small window to trade. So they want to, they've only got 20 bars to watch the market. So what are they going to do? They're going to start trading bar 1. Whereas if they would have waited to trade bar 12, they could probably do better. So sometimes waiting for more information is one of the best things you can do. And that's also, that's not a study that I quote unquote did. That kind of goes into personality. So I used to be a really big proponent of trading the first bar. I don't trade, pretty rarely will I trade the first bar now. I will, like today, I'm happy to sell the close of the second bar because I know at least if I sell the close of the second bar, it's at least going to go sideways or down. If it pulls back, I can scale in, get out, break even. But what I learned most of the time is if I trade the first bar of the day on every day, I'm generally going to lose on the open, and that's not fun. So if I break even or lose most of the time on the open, I'd rather just wait for 6 bars. And that also goes into you really have to understand your personality with the way you're trying to trade. But yeah, I think the open is the one of the single most important things to understand.
I mean,
And
I
that's
think
obviously
that's
behind first principles, the market cycle. The open still follows the rules of the market cycle. So you still have to, you can't the open is not some magical, doesn't matter. Someone asked, does it matter if you trade the Globex or just the 5-minute chart of the regular trading hours? It doesn't matter because it's both going to follow the market cycle.
yeah. I mean, and that's a great way of thinking about it. I mean, waiting for bar six, also at least bar six also puts you past the time that most of the news comes out, so you're not going to get whipped around by some algo reaction to news that doesn't really matter.
100%.
um yeah, so like waiting till 10:05 or so waiting till even bar 7 or 8 can let even that potential volatility of the 10 a.m. Die down a bit as well. um but yeah, I mean, I really I love how consistent you are with um, relying on bar six. It's like you just wait for bar
I
six.
learned it
Like
the hard way.
there's no reason to jump in. It's
The probably one of the most valuable lessons I learned is, and this sounds obvious, it's not about how many trades you take. It is about the quality of those trades. If you listen to Al, he says all the time, you just really need one swing trade a day or one breakout 4-point trade. Obviously, we talk a lot about in Systems Academy, the reasons why. If you can chop your trades up into 5 or 6 or 7 throughout the day, that's a lot better than one trade. But one good buy the close bar for 3 or 4 points is significantly better than 40 limit order trades that are just, where the profit factor is 2 overall. That is not going to be that beneficial. So if we can learn to be patient, and being patient comes from an understanding of the market and an understanding of yourself. And the fastest way to understand the market is you don't have to understand everything, but you do have to understand what you're going to trade. So if you're going to trade breakouts, understand breakouts. If you're going to trade I1Rs, understand what it is and then everything about it. If you do that, that's the fastest way to be profitable with what you're doing.
Before we break, I wanted to answer Renata's question about scaling into positions to get out of the trade. Um, think that probably is referring to not scaling in to a winning trade, but scaling into a losing position. I typically try not to scale into losing positions because if the signals that I'm trading are failing, so I have different metrics that I use to determine whether they have failed. Then it's typically better to rather than hope for a retest at some point, to actually cut the position entirely or stop and reverse. And so those are the preferable ways for me to manage a failed signal.
Makes perfect sense.
Um, but again, that comes from doing a lot of the study of that system and the different types of signals that it generates.
So understanding the context
And
of
understanding
what
the
you're
first
doing.
principle, of what that trade means. So it's not just a sell above. It's a sell above because a sell above a strong bull close. It's a sell above the strong bull close because it's at the high of a trading range. And if you get a breakout against that signal, then that trading range is you're getting a breakout from the trading range. And therefore, you have a high probability of that trading range generating a measured move of the width of that trading range. So then,
Yeah.
maybe you scale in at that measured move target and try to get out break even on a pullback. But it's much easier, just in my opinion, to either stop and reverse or cut the position.
It's really funny what you just said. And that is, I remember there was a part, PTM, one of the Saturday sessions. Ali talked about how if you want to measure the understanding of a trader, ask them how they enter. And if they're entering just kind of layering a bunch of limit orders down versus, if they can't give you the more specific of a reason they can give you as to why they're entering at this exact location will tell you their IQ or their understanding of the market as a trader. So kind of what you just said. It's not about selling the close of this big bull bar. It's not just that because it's a big bar. It's understanding that you're selling the close of the big bull bar. It's at the top of a trading range. If it breaks out of the trading range, then that means you're good that the market cycle is restarting. Maybe it's a trading range that's lasted for, you know, several days. Therefore, it could break out pretty quick. There's several pieces, but all that goes from understanding so many different contextual situations of that breakout.
Yeah, exactly. And to that point, I'm actually working on a study of uh, or working on code to do leg counting inside of trading ranges to basically identify breakout mode. So basically, so you would stop. So it would generate, flags, when the market is in breakout mode.
That's another very important topic because
One is,
that's a lot. We've had a lot of questions about that, and I think that might be what we'll talk about some tomorrow
yeah,
during
yeah.
the.
We'll definitely talk about it during SA2, but maybe we want to you know, we could even pick up with a bit of discussion about breakout mode and maybe volatility in the next stream. Talk about, because breakout mode is really your expansion of volatility after the end of a pattern is completed. So it could be an interesting way to pick up from first principle of momentum and volatility.
Yeah, you never know.
Um, so might be an interesting thing to discuss. We're happy to. I know Trader Chick has done a lot of commenting on our videos, and we've been addressing her comments here. So if you all have any questions or comments, you're welcome to leave them on the videos, and we'll read those and try to address them in the streams as well.
We absolutely will. But the most important piece, there's one thing I would say. I kind of think of streams, and I go back to studying Al in 2013, that timeline. Back then, I remember you could ask Al one question a day. If you're in the trading, you could ask him one question a day. That was it. And the interesting thing was there was not a lot of forums or ways to communicate with other people in the Brooks Trading Course community. There was just the Brooks Price Action website, and then like 9 people that would occasionally comment. The reason I'm bringing that up is it's great to listen to us, but you have to figure out a way to move forward with your game plan of what you're doing trading wise, what you're building, what you're studying. In other words, I remember I was talking to Ali. I asked him this question. I asked Al the same question, but it was in Orlando. And Ali, we were talking about a comment. I think Faisal was with us. And this was right after, everyone departed. But, anyways, it was a discussion about the path of figuring out trading. And one of the things Ali said that he thought for him, the single most important trait or variable was critical thinking. That's usually one of the greatest measurements. Someone that asks, being able to take a piece of information, go home, and then spend hours or days looking at a chart and thinking about this one thing. And that's basically what you're doing in Systems Academy. It's what James did with I1R. It's staring at the chart and thinking through this concept for months.
And
That is the
actually,
difference maker.
there's we haven't talked about this, but I've been thinking about it, and it might be Brad. Maybe we can talk about it some more. But the really what you're doing when you develop a system is you're developing a product, right? That is supposed to accomplish a goal. I mean, Ali is sometimes referred to them as widgets, right? You build these widgets,
Yep.
and they all have different. You can fit them all together. But one of the principles of product design and development is starting from the highest level of abstraction and moving through to the lowest level of abstraction. And highest level is going to be your basically your design document, your I was going to say manifesto. It's not a manifesto, but it's basically your design idea. And it has to be catchy, right? It has to have. This is why Ali has like names for things, and why I call
Good
this
luck
that
trade.
other. Yeah, the good luck trade. The attack formations. The why I call it Big Bertha. Um, and so you have one sheet that basically lays out from the first principles what this thing is going to accomplish, and why it's going to do these things. And then you move into your development phase. And if you're coding, then you're writing code. If you're developing it with a flow chart, you're developing your flow chart. Then you move from there into quality assurance testing, and that's your back testing. That's your forward testing, and then it's your deployment, which is bringing it into the market and doing your actual live forward testing, um, and then it's iterating on that. And so in each of those, if you haven't completed the previous step, then whatever step you move to next is not going to work. If you
It's
overlook
funny.
any of those parts in any of those previous steps, every subsequent step will have gaps.
So if I'm an aspiring trader, and let's say I'm willing to work hard, I'm willing to look at a lot of charts, but I really don't want to do that. I just want to look at charts. And, do you think that's going to increase the timeline of trying to figure things out?
I mean, invariably, yeah. Because
Yeah, there's almost just, it's
if you don't have a
undoubtedly.
if you don't have a process, if you don't have a process that you follow to achieve it, I mean, this is why all of the successful software development companies have these processes that their different departments work with. This is
Standard operating procedures.
yeah, this is the how Stack Overflow works. It's how Microsoft works. It's how everyone who's developing a product that they're going to bring to the market develops them in this way. And it's the same way that we work on our systems. But I was thinking about it in those terms because I think that it might be more immediately kind of relatable when someone thinks about these kind of higher levels of abstraction and really completing your work in each of them before moving on. Um,
Well,
we
that's
can
what
talk.
we're having them do right. I mean, students do right now, isn't it? I mean, in
Yeah,
a nutshell, they're thinking of the
that
big overview piece,
exactly.
and then once they can really figure that piece out, they funnel down to the next piece. So building a system is not about, oh, should I build a breakout or a high two? It starts way bigger than that.
And it has to, otherwise you won't be able to properly develop the idea when you start doing the organizing the information about the signals and actually generating those signals. And, and
Absolutely.
and the signal generator can be in code or it can be on paper. It can be um, like you said, it can be a flow chart or anything like that. The signal generator is just telling you whether on a specific bar there is something that you should be doing according to those systems parameters. And
100%.
yeah, absolutely.
Well, I think we've given almost an hour and a half's worth of information, maybe a
Yeah,
little less,
we are not
but
doing much better with being brief. We're gonna work on that.
yeah. So as always, we'll do these pretty regularly going forward. If you want to learn more about Systems Academy, there's the links at the bottom. And other than that, feel free to comment, ask questions, and we'll see everybody soon.
Yeah, have a great night, everyone.
Thanks, everybody.